Hi everybody, Dan Ullman, Mike Beer with graded stakes action on the Kentucky Derby undercard. Race number 9 at 1.16 miles on the turf is the American Turf Stakes for 3-year-olds. Let's take a peek at this field. Down on the rail is the number 1, A Thread of Blue, who had an extremely productive Gulfstream winter campaign, winning 3 races, 2 stakes, and the Grade 3 Palm Beach last time out. The Palm Beach to me was kind of a workmanlike effort, but at least he showed that he could sit from off the pace. And I think in this spot, if this Keeneland wants the lead, he can get it.
Yeah, I think he can get it from the inside post, but you're right, it was nice to see him just sort of take up a tracking spot. He was very content to do that last time when Casa Creed came to take a shot at him in the stretch. He turned that horse away. I thought he ran fine in that race. I think this is a way tougher spot than any of the fields he's faced so far, especially in his last 3. But I didn't dismiss this horse that lightly. I mean, I think he's got a big chance in this race. And I went a different direction, but I'm not going to be surprised when he runs really well again.
His tactical speed puts him in the mix. He has been a beacon of consistency. I think you got to consider him in multiple race wagers. The 3's Digital Age. This is a very lightly raced Chad Brown trainee. Still hasn't figured out the gate. You can tell that he's still learning the game, but he overcame a pretty slow pace in that Columbia. Look at those fractions for a mile race. 23-4, 49 flat, and not only was this horse pretty far back, he came very wide into the stretch, but he simply wanted it more than the others because he ran them down just in the shadow of the wire. I wonder if this is a little too much too soon, but Chad's confident.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we'll see what happens with him. I don't deny his talent so far. You can tell that this horse can really run. His career debut is really something to see. It was almost, he had no idea what he was doing in that race, and he just rolled that field over once he sort of straightened out in the stretch, and he didn't even really seem to be trying in that race. Last time he had to work a little bit harder, but as you say, the pace really wasn't there for him. He had a lot of ground to make up from the top of the stretch to the wire. I personally didn't think he was going to get there, but he got there. That was a really nice finish and a really good effort for this horse. He is very dangerous in here, but these are better horses. He's going to have to up his game again.
He beat the 6 Forever Mo in that Cutler Bay, and after winning a couple of races against weaker competition, Forever Mo's dropped a couple of heartbreakers. That went to Digital Age when it looked like he was going to win it, and last time out to Seismic Wave, who's also in this field. That Cutler Bay had a completely different pace scenario, though, than the Columbia. It was a fast pace. Forever Mo is very adaptable, which is a good sign, but it looked like Seismic Wave just always had more kick late.
That's how I felt about it. Both of his last two. I think he ran fine in both of those races, but it wasn't quite good enough. And now, like a lot of these horses, he just steps in and faces some much better horses. So, like a lot of horses in here, he's got to improve again.
Speaking of Seismic Wave, he went 2 for 2 since being equipped with Lasix by the great Bill Mott down at Gulfstream over the winter. And he took advantage in the Cutler Bay, perhaps, of that fast pace. But I love how Arad Ortiz, who was riding him that day, showed a lot of confidence. He easily could have swung wide turning into the stretch. He stayed inside. He was in behind horses. He found a seam. He knifed his way on through, and he finished very strong. He's another horse that might be adaptable. I see him coming from mid-pack.
I see him from off the pace in this race as well. But he's just improved from start to start. He's got a nice pedigree, as you'd expect from Juddmonte. I like all of his races. I think he's run well from day one. He keeps getting better with every start. I think he fits really well in this field. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. We see A Thread of Blue, who's very tactical, the number 1 there on the lead, with the number 4 Marquis Prince. So I think we'll take up a stalking spot here. Marquis Prince won a little stakes race at the fairgrounds in his seasonal debut, but I have to admit I was a little disappointed in his effort in the Cutler Bay. He was bet down to 11-10, and while, yes, he was closer to the pace, that hot pace, than Seismic Wave and Forever Mo, I mean, he ranged up and had a big look at it in mid-stretch and just didn't finish.
He was closer to the pace, but he wasn't right on it. I thought he overall got a pretty good trip, had his chance at it, wasn't good enough. It made me not really want him in this race as he faces better horses this time, but he does have some talent.
We see the 11 Weekly Call up close to the pace. This horse is kind of hard to recommend. He went through the auction ring after the Transylvania, where he finished behind several of these horses. He sold for, I believe, $65,000, and he just has to improve off his recent starts. His only win came for a maiden tag.
Yeah, he's just a big long shot in this race from a tough post.
Let's talk about a couple of the other contenders in this race, beginning with the number 7 Casa Creed. We mentioned him briefly. Casa Creed is already a stakes winner around 2 turns. He won the Kitten's Joy 3 starts back. back, where I think he took advantage of a slow-paced race and able to win. A Thread of Blue has had his number in the last 2 races. I thought his last race was inoffensive. He made a bid at a Thread of Blue, but you're right. A Thread of Blue just kind of flicked him away the last 16th of a mile.
Yeah, he did. I mean, listen, I feel like he ran pretty well in that race, though. You know, he's another horseman who I feel like he's probably going to be a pretty big price in this race. We'll see how that all shakes out, but since they've switched him to turf, I mean, he really hasn't done anything wrong. He's run well in all 3 of those races, I think, especially the last one. Yeah, a Thread of Blue got the better of him that day, but this horse took a run at it. He was 3 wide the entire way, took a look at it, settled for second best, but he ran pretty well in that spot,
It's up to Johnny V to get him to save a little bit more ground. You're right. He was wide for a good portion of that race, and he does have figs that indicate he can win here. I would use him in multiple race wagers. Let's talk about that Grade 3 Transylvania. Avies Flatter finished ahead of several of these horses. Avies Flatter was the champion 2-year-old in Canada in 2018, and the Winterbrook for this year's Winterbrook favorite for this year's Queen's Plate. He won the Transylvania last time out. I don't really think bottled up to lane is the right short comment. I mean, he was tracking in and among horses, but once a hole opened up in the top of the stretch, he eased out. He got bumped a little bit, but he went right about his business. He's a nice horse. He got the good trip that day.
Yeah, he did get a good trip. I mean, I'll agree with your take on the short comment. I mean, if nothing else, if you want to give him a little credit for being, surrounded by horses and holding his position the entire way, that's a good thing, because he easily could have backed out of there. He didn't do that. He held it, and then once he came clear, I like the way that he finished in that race. Actually, I like the way he's finished in each of his last 3 races. He is a good horse. He fits really well in here. We'll see what kind of price he is. I wouldn't take too short a price on him, but he's a horse I'm using in this race.
Number 12, the Black Album, is a group winner in France, and in his first start for Rudy Brisset in the Grade 3 Transylvania. It was his first start off the layoff, but I thought all in all a very good trip. Yeah. He was sitting in the pocket in behind the pace setter. He eased out with a big look in the 2-path, and was just no match for Avies Flatter and Henley's Joy. Now, I guess he could improve second off the layoff, but that trip is not available to him here from post 12.
Yeah, that's the same way I feel about him. I mean, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he was off the layoff there, but that trip couldn't have gone any better for him. He came clear at the top of the stretch with dead aim. He did his best in there, Dan. It's not like, to me anyway, when I watched it, it's not like he looked like he needed a race or anything. He did his best. He was right there. He was no match for the 1-2 finishers, and now he's got to do better from a much more difficult post.
The 9 War Film won his first 2 races despite breaking poorly both times, and he was tested for class in the Transylvania. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure whether he passed the test or not. I thought he ran adequately. He basically saved ground near the back of the pack every step. He never moved from the rail. He was running a little bit in the lane. He is lightly raced with a lot of upside. I just wonder if this is the spot. I think maybe he's 2 or 3 races away from his breakout performance.
Boy, we feel the same way about him. I like his races. I think he has some talent. Obviously, he's got the pedigree and the connections, all that stuff. He didn't run poorly last time. Being last on the rail sometimes isn't easy. He got an awful lot of room from outside the 8th pole, though, and he was racing on. I thought he did fine. I also think he has to do better in this field.
Louder Than Bombs, the 13. I've always been a big fan of him. I've chased him for a while. He just hasn't been able to beat Henley's Joy or Casa Creed or a Thread of Blue. I thought he ran well in the Dania Beach. He was checked a little bit at the quarter pole and was just second best to him that day. Didn't really take much of a step forward. I didn't find an excuse for him in the Palm Beach 2 starts back. Last time out in the Transylvania, let's give him a mulligan for that race. He ended up 5 wide on the backstretch, very wide turning into the lane. That's not representative of his effort. He wasn't really embarrassed in that race. It's just he draws another lousy post and he'll probably be wide again.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he drew so poorly because he's the kind of horse who I feel like at a really big price you could throw in there somewhere and hope that he makes some noise. He needs to catch some breaks if he's going to beat a few of these horses, and drawing post 13, he obviously didn't catch a break there, so we'll see if he can just work out some kind of trip from out there. He's not a bad horse at all. I think he'd get a piece of this at a price.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Grade 2 American Turf. You're going with the remarkably consistent number 10 Henley's Joy. He's only run 2 bad races in his life, and he has excuses for both. One was the Breeders' Cup, just an extremely boggy turf course that many horses didn't handle over Breeders' Cup weekend, and then on dirt in the Risen Star. And he's not supposed to be a dirt horse. He's by Kitten's Joy. I thought he had the worst of it in the Transylvania. He kind of brushed the stall coming out of the gate. He ended up very wide on the backstretch. I understand why Tyler Gaffalione tried to get him inside to save a little bit of ground on the turn, but then he ended up in behind horses, and he didn't get clear until very late. He was running at Avies Flatter. Listen, you know you're going to get a consistent effort from him.
Yeah, he's just a good horse. I don't know that he stands out in this field in any way. I think he fits really well, though. To me, he's just the kind of horse, Breeders' Cup aside. He just runs. He runs his race every time on turf. The Transylvania, I'm with you. I just think he was really unlucky. And this is no knock on Avies Flatter at all, but I thought this horse was unlucky and maybe best in there. And I felt the same way about his race 3 back and the Kitten's Joy when Casa Creed beat him. I mean, he was very unlucky trying to close too late after getting caught behind horses in a race with no pace. So I think he's even better than he looks on paper. I don't know what kind of price he's going to be in here, Dan, but I like him.
Do you buy the Beyer speed figure for Social Paranoia's last race? It was a 95 Beyer. It was his first start as a 3-year-old off a layoff, and maybe Todd figured him out. I thought visually it was very good. I mean, he sat a good 3-wide tracking trip, and he just destroyed that field once they swung into the stretch. Timeform US is not as kind on their raw speed figures. I think they gave him a 104, but if Social Paranoia really is a 95 Beyer horse, all of a sudden he's the horse to beat in this race.
Yes.
And he's got enough tactical speed where I think he's just going to tuck in behind a thread of blue and let that horse tow him to the lane.
I do too. And listen, it's not like his 2-year-old turf races aren't any good. I mean, he ran well in those races as well. Listen, he ran a 95 last time. Nobody else in this field, and they've all had plenty of chances. Nobody's broken 90 in here. If he runs a 95, he's going to win. I thought it was tough to evaluate that race, if only because, one, he was up on the pace with a first-time starter, so who knows how good that horse is. And then the other thing is, after he took over, nobody ran. He's the only one who ran in the race, so I thought it was difficult to evaluate. I don't think I would bet him at a short price. I am definitely using him at multis, though. How do you not use him off that race?
He ran very, very well that day. I'm going 2, 1, 5, and 7. You're going with Henley's Joy, 10, 5, 3, and 8. Who would you use mostly in multis? I know you like Henley's Joy a lot in here. I know you want to use a little Seismic Wave. He's been that impressive.
Yeah, I'm going to use those 4, the 10, 5, 3, and my top 4 picks. I would use all 4 of them, and I think I would also use Social Paranoia, just because I don't know, Dan. I don't love him in this race, but I just don't know. I can't get knocked out by that.
So Mike's going 10, 5, 3, 8, 2. I'm going to go use 2, 1, 5, 7 in the American Turf. It's race number 9 on Derby Day Saturday, and it has an approximate post of 3:37 Eastern. Good luck.